Welcome to Real Estate Coaching Radio, starring award-winning real estate coaches and #1 international best-selling authors, Tim and Julie Harris. This is the #1 daily radio show for realtors looking for a no BS, authentic, real-time coaching experience. What's really working in today's market, how to generate more leads, make more money, and have more time for what you love in your life. And now your hosts, Tim and Julie Harris.
All right. Hello, everyone. This is Tim and Julie Harris, and it is Real Estate Coaching. This is our podcast, but we're going to be doing something a little bit different, a little bit off the menu, which hopefully everyone will enjoy. And first, I'm going to introduce two very special guests who have a company called Fortified Risk. You can see it at fortifiedrisk.com. And these guys are super awesome. We're going to start with Jake Williams. They're both former Navy SEALs with over 35 years of experience in international, domestic, public, and private security services. So let's start with Jake, who was honorably discharged from the U.S. military in 2017 after 12 years of service in the Naval Special Operations community. Jake served at SEAL Team 7 and was an instructor at Basic Underwater Demolition SEAL Training and SEAL Qualification Training. During his tenure, Jake conducted 5 combat deployments in support of Operation Enduring Freedom and Operation Iraqi Freedom. His many combat commendations include the Joint Service Commendation Medal with Combat Valor, the Navy and Marine Corps Commendation Medal with Combat Valor, the Army Commendation Medal, and numerous other joint and individual awards. He was awarded the Admiral Ricketts Award for Inspirational Leadership. As a SEAL student, he was selected by his peers and instructor as Class Honorman. After transitioning out of the Navy, Jake has led large-scale construction and development projects, advised AI companies, and co-founded a security consulting company that works with both the public and private sectors. He also serves on multiple boards of veteran transition programs. He's a native of the San Fernando Valley of California, and he enlisted in the Navy in 2005, graduated from Basic Underwater Demolition SEAL Training in November of 2006, holds a BS degree in Strategic Studies and Defense Analysis from Norwich University, and a Master of Business for Veterans from the University of Southern California. He currently resides in Nashville, Tennessee, with his wife and 3 children. So that is all about Jake. We're going to talk about Robin next. Kind of makes normal bios seem just like kind of lame.
Oh, I feel like I'm about a half inch tall. I'm feeling about a half inch tall. Yeah. I mean, I was doing the math and I was trying to think where we were in our careers at the same age that Jake was. I'm guessing Jake's probably 5 or 6 years younger than us.
Yeah.
And I think you and I were still figuring out how to fill out real estate contracts.
Exactly. Yeah. I know. Keeping things in perspective.
Yeah.
All right. So Robin retired from the U.S. military in 2018 after 20 years of service in the Naval Special Operations community. Robin served at SEAL Delivery Vehicle Team 1, SEAL Team 5, Naval Special Warfare Development Group, and instructor duty at SEAL Qualification Training. During his tenure, Robin conducted 11 combat deployments in support of Operation Enduring Freedom, Operation Iraqi Freedom, and several other missions worldwide. His many combat commendations include the Silver Star Medal, 2 Bronze Star Medals with Combat Valor, the Purple Heart, 3 Joint Service Commendation Medals with Combat Valor, 3 Navy and Marine Commendation Medals with Combat Valor, 2 Presidential Unit Citations, and numerous other joint and individual awards. Shortly after retirement, Robin co-founded a security consulting company that works with both public and private sectors. He also volunteers his time with veteran-focused nonprofits. Robin is a native of Pasadena, California. He enlisted in the Navy in 1998 and graduated from Basic Underwater Demolition SEAL Training in October of '99. Robin holds a BS degree in Strategic Studies and Defense Analysis from Norwich University, and he currently resides in Nashville, Tennessee with wife and son. So that's a little bit about Robin and Jake.
Well,
so
guys,
I'll turn it over to you guys.
Thank you very much for being our guests today on the podcast. It's funny, I know our podcast listeners, this podcast will probably have 25,000, 30,000 downloads. I know they're going to love what we're going to be talking about and sharing, mostly because this is completely out of our wheelhouse. I guess what I'm saying is this is a real honor to have both of you guys on, and thank you for the service to our country. And we mean that. Truly, guys, we're beside ourselves that you're guests on our show. So that's pretty incredible to both of you. Absolutely our honor. So we do have some questions, and I sent you guys these questions ahead of time. I'm not sure.
And we have your questions as well.
I'm not sure if we'll get through all these questions or if we'll just, if you guys want to drill down on maybe a few of them that you think will encompass, however, whatever we need to do this. And I would really like to talk about, I'm excited to talk about Fortified Risk, the company you guys are involved in. That's really exciting and interesting, and something a lot of people, when I was reading some of the notes about what you guys offer, I'm going to turn the air conditioning back on.
Yeah.
We just got back from the gym.
And we live in the Caribbean, so it heats up like that.
Yeah. We're like in a microwave. So let's just start out with the first question. And by the way, listeners, if the audio quality is a little bit different on a podcast, it's because this is also being recorded for Zoom. So this podcast is also going to be on Zoom. And you can obviously then watch the interview live, and the audio quality won't be as good as our normal studio. So please don't discount the quality of the content, because the audio quality isn't necessarily where it should be. So Julie, you can go on with the first question.
Yes, well, I think that so many of us admire Navy SEALs and of course our friends in the military, but the question is, how do you actually decide to become a SEAL? How does that thought process happen? Whoever wants to go first.
Go ahead, Robin. Yeah.
I'm older, so I'll go first.
Yeah.
It's an interesting question. Even as a young child, I always had a desire to serve. I wasn't certain what capacity it would be in, but I always had this strong attraction to serving our country. My family was involved in a really violent crime when I was a young child, and it really, it molded who I was. All I ever wanted to do was protect people. I wanted to help people and protect people. And as I matured, I read everything I could about special operations, and really the one that stuck out to me was the SEAL teams, because of my affinity to the ocean. I love the ocean. Not only is it cathartic, but it is untamed, and it's a beast, and I love the ocean. And so it was just kind of a natural progression for me. I really wanted to be a SEAL, and I also really wanted to protect our way of life. Everything that we do, I love so much about the United States of America and the freedoms we have. And I just wanted to maintain that. And I thought the best way to do that is to join a special operations unit. And then again, choose the one that is close to the water, because I enjoy surfing and I love the ocean. That's
Robin,
really
were you in the Navy first and then became a SEAL, or did you just
No, I joined the Navy in 1998 with the specific intent of going to basic underwater demolition SEAL training. So I literally, and things have changed a little bit, and I don't want to convolute it, but like you go to boot camp, and then yesteryear you went to what was called an A school. That was like this specific job in the Navy. And then you went to BUD/S, and I did that exact pathway. So I was no time in the regular Navy, or the fleet, we call it. I spent just a little bit, just that little initial portion in boot camp and then A school. And then I was at BUD/S and straight through BUD/S and in the SEAL teams my entire career.
That's what's really interesting about the SEALs is that, I mean, I'm oversimplifying it, but you can basically qualify, hypothetically assume you qualify, you make it through Navy base, boot
We
camp.
can go when you're 18, can't you?
And then you can just go right to this. You can just write. But if you do try to be a SEAL and you don't make it past BUD/S, then you're on a ship. Is that basically how it works?
That's right.
So that's really good motivation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is.
Send you to sea.
Yeah, send you to see. How about you, Jake? Sorry.
Similar. At a young age, I had a desire to serve. I realized that we live in this awesome country. I had grandparents, World War II, Vietnam, Korean War, just kind of family that fought during that time. And I always had this longing desire to protect, to defend, to serve. And I was a young kid in my front yard playing, finger quotes, Army with my brothers. And my neighbor across the street was going to the Naval Academy at the time. He was about 10 years older than me. He's like, "What are you guys doing?" And we're like, "Oh, we're playing Army." He's like, "Oh, the Navy has the SEALs." And I had never heard of that beforehand. I was probably 8 or 9 years old. And so from like that day forward, I, went to the library, checked out a handful of books and started reading. And similar to Robin, it was like, I love the water. I wanted to be challenged and I wanted to protect and defend. So at that early age, I geared my life towards being a SEAL.
So what are the differences between Navy SEALs and the other special forces guys? Because there's every Air Force, Army, they all have Marines, of course. They have. So what's the main difference? If someone's listening right now and they're ambitious and they're the right age and have the right mindset, how do they decide which direction to go?
Yeah, it's a good question.
Go ahead, Jake. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, chime in where you want there. We're given different mission set capabilities, right? Naval Special Warfare, or NSW, or Naval Special Operations Forces, we're really specialized in that maritime component, right? Where anything maritime, anything on the water that comes up, we're supposed to be the experts at that and take it. Green Berets, or also known as Special Forces in the Army, they are real specialized in like unconventional warfare, and going in and do that type of stuff. And Air Force has combat controllers, or PJs, pararescue men, and they really specialize in high-end special operations, medicine, battlefield trauma, or close air support, guiding an aircraft. There's been so much overlap over the years also, right? Because, and Robin can probably share to this as well, but when 9/11 happened and the SEAL teams were going into Iraq and Afghanistan, it was like, well, don't you guys only operate in the water? And it was like, well, actually, sea, air, and land. SEAL is an acronym for sea, air, and land. And so those are all the environments that we operate in, that we infiltrate in. So there is an overlap. But Robin, go ahead and chime in if you have anything else to add there.
I mean, Jake, you hit it really well. The SEAL teams are just the maritime component of Special Operations Command. So SOCOM, or Special Operations Command, it's the home of all the Special Operations community. And theoretically or doctrinally, like, we all historically had areas of operation or a very set mission set. And prior to 9/11, the SEAL team, it was like 3 miles from the hinterland, from the water line into whatever country, wherever we are. And that's literally where we're supposed to be working. And we just happen to be pretty good at everything, like all the other guys and gals in Special Operations community. And there was a lot of work to be done. So that's why where we are now and all over the globe, all Special Operations are in all these. They're not limited by their kind of geographical definition, historically maritime. But so we do have to, everything we do, we have to train to come from and return to the water. So our gear may be a little bit different than maybe a Army component that has a similar capability. Their radios may not be as waterproof. Ours have to be diveable to 2 or 3 fathoms, to launch and recover from submarines, stuff like that. Our optics on our weapons need to be diveable to certain depths. But really, we all kind of do the same stuff, and everyone's actually in SOCOM. Everyone's really good at what they do, so it creates a lot of competition. Which competition makes you really good.
Well, speaking of competition, tell us a little bit about your BUDS training. I think everyone is fascinated with that. And I know for me, just keeping it super practical, because cannot relate in any way. But, like when I'm on the treadmill and I think I'm going to die, I think about you guys, like not even remotely in the same stratosphere. So tell us a little bit about BUDS, or maybe a favorite BUDS story. I read something researching prior to our meeting today that there's the ringing the bell, and a quote, I don't know exactly who said it, but you don't want to ring the bell in life. You always know you can, but don't ring the bell. Yeah. And so tell us a little bit about your BUDS experience.
Turn it a little bit closer because air conditioning. Yeah.
Well, okay, first I'll tell you what BUDS is for. And Jake, again, please chime in. Because Jake and I both worked as instructors at the ends of our careers. So we got to see kind of the 360-degree approach to this thing. Not only were we students on the receiving end of pain and suffering, but it's not so much supposed to be pain and suffering. The intent is to find a man with grit. Find this person. It was a characteristic. We're like, what are we looking for? Grit. You're looking for a person that won't quit when it's tough, when it's cold, when it's wet, when it's miserable. So really, that's what BUDS is. It's not a ton of training. It's putting folks like ourselves in really challenging positions, and challenging in mentally. It's just cold and wet. BUDS is really low tech. There's no technology there. It's sand and the ocean and wind and push-ups and pull-ups. It doesn't require computer chips and technology. It requires the will to succeed and the will to fight under really challenging circumstances. All it takes to make you miserable is water and time, regardless of how warm or cold the water is. I will make you cold, or they will make us cold in a certain amount of time. And that's like, when you're miserable and cold, the first thing you want to do is get warm. And that's where you find if you have that grit or that will. Jake, I'll turn it over to you, but really that's what the intent there is to find a tough, gritty person, and then we'll train you after.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So Buds is about 6 months long, and it is a grind from start to finish. It's hard to get there, and then when you're in there, it's a challenge to stay in, and it is a grind from start to finish. A question I get of a lot from friends, family, just people that are like, "Oh, tell me about Buds." They always want to know, like, what was the hardest thing, or what were some of the hardest things you had to do in Buds? And as I reflect on it more over the years, the answer I've come up with is like, there's not one thing that's like, oh my gosh, that was so challenging, or that's what made it so hard. It's like the ingredients of Buds making whatever it is you're going for in the kitchen. It's all of it put together that just make it incredibly challenging, because you're operating for 6 months on very little sleep. You do eat well. That's one thing. You have to be packed full of calories to sustain, but you operate on very little sleep with very short timelines to accomplish like big tasks. And when you add all that up, like Robin was saying, no sleep, you're wet, you're cold, you're always sandy, so you're always getting chafed, and just, it is the ultimate grind to see if, when it really gets bad, if you can stick it out. And I know as a student, you're just like, well, I'm going to put one foot in front of the next and keep going. In life, it's kind of like, I saw classmates of mine, and then also later as an instructor, people get overwhelmed really easily. It's like you throw this elephant in front of them, and now they feel like they got to eat it all at once. And then people start quitting, people start falling. But it's like in those challenging moments, that's when you say, hey, I'm just going to go 1 foot in front of the other. And then before you know it, you've made it another 100 yards, and you've made another mile. And then you're like, you know what? I'm just going to make it to the next meal. Okay, I've made it to the next meal. Look, I'm still around. I'm going to make it through the next evolution. And you just go and go. I think part of my paradigm shift was in training and telling you guys about it. As an instructor, you know, we'd been at war. When I started being an instructor, we'd been at war for about 15 years. And so, like Robin was saying, we're looking for guys with grit. As I'm looking at guys in first phase going through Hell Week and all of this incredibly difficult training, I'm like, is this guy worthy of standing shoulder to shoulder with my best friends, my brothers that are still going down range and still fighting our enemies? Like, can I put my stamp of approval knowing that he will give it everything to protect my buddy's back? And that was really what it came down to there. And that's what we were looking for in Bud's training.
You mind if we drill down on that a little bit? Because that's
Sure.
very interesting.
Yeah.
So, so what are the traits, like when you're trying to study that guy to decide whether or not you want to give him your seal of approval, no pun intended.
Yeah.
Exactly. How does that work? What are the qualities you look for? Is it just an intuitive feel?
It's a selflessness is really what it boils down to. It's a selflessness, because we do so many team building. You never think of it you never call it team building in Buds, but all of these team oriented exercises, right? Where you're either under a boat, under a log, like a big telephone pole, if you've seen that stuff. And as an instructor, what we noticed was typically the way a very common exercise in Buds is what we call like boats on heads, or you're carrying these rafts. They're like big river raft boats that are designed to hold 6 to 7 people. They weigh about 250 pounds, and they're inflatable. And a lot of times you carry them around on your head, and you're grouped with people that are equal height, so that everyone's carrying about an equal amount of weight. And you run for miles and miles with these things on your head. You kind of take them everywhere with you in the first 4 weeks of training. We would run these races where you have to, your boat crew of 6 or 7 guys have to keep up. As soon as one person starts to say, oh, my head hurts, my neck hurts, or my legs are tired, I can't keep up, like that boat, it can be so contagious, and that boat just like completely falls apart. And so what we noticed was, like, when the guys next to them were more concerned when you as an individual were more concerned about the other guys in your boat crew and performing for them and putting out for them so that you're carrying an equal amount of weight on your head, those boat crews thrived. They performed really well. And it sounds profound, but it's also so simple, right? Like if I look out for the guy next to me and I don't worry so much about myself, we ended up succeeding. And so boiling down to selflessness.
That makes sense.
That's really what they try to instill in you, the instructor cadre. As a student, it's not about you, it's about the team. We always talk team gear, personal gear. You know, like at the end of the day, you take care of all of our gear, and then you take care of yourself. You eat last, you get water last, you take care of us now, because the mission requires that boat. It just for training, that is mission critical equipment, that boat. And now it resonates into everything else down the line in combat, if it's a weapon system or an aircraft or whatever. But you take care of that equipment because you're taking care of the team. The team requires that. Take care of your shoes and your personal gear later on. But that's stuff that you take care of after we've taken care of the team and taking care of all of us. I think one other piece to it too is it's staying positive. Really, you know, calm breeds calm, fear breeds fear, panic breeds panic. All of those things build on itself. And the job is challenging. So it's keeping a good head on your shoulders and staying calm and cool under pressure, under gunfire, because that resonates. So and again, it's just take it all the way back to the boats. If I'm cool and calm, then Jake stays cool and calm, and we're all putting out together, you actually you create a very unique sense of humor amongst each other that creates this esprit de corps that I've never seen anywhere else. You may joke about some of the most macabre stuff in ever, but it's motivation to keep you going. On the flip side, if I start telling Jake how bad my neck hurts and how tired I am and how hungry I am, all it does is it snowballs. Everyone recognizes how tired they are. Everyone recognizes how cold they are and how chafed they are. And then you start falling apart, and then your team starts falling back, and everything in BUD/S is a competition. So if you aren't first, I mean, I was going to quote Ricky Bobby, if you aren't first, you're last. But really, if you're not winning, there's going to be some repercussions to failure, and that a lot of times involves getting back in that Pacific Ocean. And that's not a whole lot of fun when you're already borderline hypothermic.
So I'm sorry, Jake. Go ahead.
I was going to say there's a common term we use. It pays to be a winner, and that's something that starts getting reinforced day one. It pays to be a winner. Whatever, you know, as a team, it pays to be a winner.
So BUD/S sounds like it's mostly psychological testing in essence. And I'm curious, as instructors, since you guys are both BUD/S instructors, so the things you just said, do you tell the guys trying to become SEALs, the guys in BUD/S, do you tell them what you just told us about the fact that these are the qualities and characteristics we look for? Or are you just looking for the people that already have those qualities and characteristics to bubble up to the top? Like, how much training are you observing? Or are you coaching them, saying no bitching in the boat? I mean, I'm just curious.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. I'll tell you personally, and when guys show up and they've made it to BUD/S, there's such we haven't even really talked about this, but there's such a pathway to get there, right? Like if you've gotten there, you've made it through what, even with today's pipeline, the way it works, you've gotten through a series of hoops just to make it to day one. And there's a lot of quitting before even day one. There's like 6 or 7 weeks of quals and testing at a minimum to get to day one. And so when guys get to day one, I want to see people that have it intrinsically, an intrinsic motivation to succeed. If I have to draw that out of them, it's typically a losing scenario for them.
Well, and Jake, to add to that, BUD/S, it's challenging because I've always wanted to be a coach. I want to coach these young men, but BUD/S is like kind of the selection side of the house where it's fair but tough. I was a SEAL qualification instructor, but occasionally I would support the Hell Weeks, first phase Hell Weeks. But SEAL qualification is the coaching. SEAL qualification is they have made it through selection. It's over. They graduate. Now they come over to us and we have to qualify them and all the skill sets that it takes to be a SEAL. Everything from shooting to land navigation to diving, closed circuit, oxygen, rebreathers. But we coach. Again, we're fair but tough, but that's where I thrived. I love coaching. I love helping them learn how to be a better SEAL, be a better person. And that's a very different approach from like first phase.
Yeah.
First, there's 3 phases, first, second, and third. And first phase is where they have the core of the selection. That's where Hell Week is homed. And you're not really there to coach them. Let the process work itself out. Let the sand get where it's going to hurt. Let the water get where it's going to make you cold. Because really, we don't want the person to quit. And we don't want the person to quit, but I don't want the quitter to make it, because the job is really tough. It is tough. It's tough. It's cold. It's challenging, and we want the right person. We want that gritty person.
Robin, what are the physical requirements prior to even starting BUD/S? I did study this a little bit prior to today's interview. I'm just curious. It's a certain number of pull-ups, and you have to run a mile in a certain amount of time, and sit-ups, stuff like that, right?
Yeah, and honestly, I hadn't been through BUD/S since 1998, so it's been a while, and the standards have kind of ebbed and flowed, but it's really not that challenging. It is, I think, at boot camp to advance forward, to be selected to start contracting you to go to BUD/S. I think it was like 8 pull-ups and 1.5 miles in boots.
We could do that.
So I think that's the point that
Sorry.
That's what gets lost in translation, though, is I think a lot of folks think of SEALs as superhuman. They're not. Jake and I are just not big people by any stretch of the imagination. I'm 5'10", 180 pounds. Jake's shorter than me. We're just normal. We're your neighbors and your brothers and your husbands. It's just, they're average guys with an unwillingness to fail. That's why the standards, they're not that tough, but when you put it over 6-8 months, over and over, and every morning starts at 5 or 4:30, and you're always cold and you're always wet, and there's no room for injuries. If you get injured, it's not going to work out so well, because those times always get shorter, or the runs get longer with a shorter duration. So each phase has its own requirements for runs, 3-mile time runs, and obstacle courses, and open water ocean swims. Those times, the distances get longer and the times get shorter. So none of them are unattainable. Theoretically, I could give you guys the times for third phase, the end of BUD/S. And if you isolated each one of these, this 3-mile time run, yeah, you'd be like, okay, that's not that hard. But accompany it with 5-6 months prior to that of just getting little sleep, getting crushed physically, mentally, emotionally, and having to show up every morning and tell yourself you're already shaking. The day hasn't even started and you're already tired. So it's not like these isolated little sections that are challenging. Put it all together. The holistic BUD/S holistically is such a beast, but it doesn't take an Olympian. And actually,
I've seen Olympians quit BUD/S.
Yeah, we've seen
Wow.
that's the thing. You picture these big bodybuilder type guys, or big, like a big tight end from whatever college, they statistically don't work out because they have more mass to get from A to B or A to Z. When you're running, I don't remember the stats anymore, but like an average day of BUD/S, you're running, Jake, what, like 10, 12 miles?
You run at least 6 miles a day just to eat. You have to run a mile to eat and then a mile back. And so regardless, it's 6 miles a day. And then if you throw on a timed run, now you're at 10. You throw on a conditioning run, you're at 12 miles a day.
Wow.
Not including all, then that doesn't count as like your physical training for the day. That's just part of the business.
Warm up.
That's just part of the business.
Wow.
I just listen to you guys talk, and in our business, one of the things we tell people to do is not chase being comfortable, right?
Mm-hmm.
It seems like our culture is going from their comfortable warm, massage bed, and they want to get back there as fast as possible.
Yeah.
And they want to avoid anything and like in our business, agents will do everything in their power to feel anything that even remotely resembles rejection. And so we tell them, and it's in our book, Harris Rules, we tell them if they haven't put themselves in the position to hear the word no at least 5 times a day, no from not from their wives or their kids or their dogs, but no from somebody who they're trying to do business with, they haven't done their job. And Julie and I enjoy saying that in front of groups of agents, because the faces, they just go,
they don't like it.
They hate it. but
Yeah.
that's the truth. And that's
Yeah.
what you guys are describing.
And
Yeah.
I really like what you said about what you, at the end of the day, you're looking for the person that has grit.
Mm.
I think that's a really great way of defining it, because so many things in life are like that. People
Yep.
that thrive and survive and are successful.
Yeah.
So how can you talk about this idea of being situationally aware? I know that's something in your training, we refer to it from time to time. We'll say that to each other when we're, maybe in a town that we're not familiar with, or
Sure.
driving somewhere. Can you talk a little bit about that, both in terms of your SEAL training and instructing, but also how to apply it in day-to-day life?
Yeah. From an operational standpoint, we go to a new region, we go to somewhere that we're typically maybe have never been or are not familiar with, in the Middle East, or you name it. In the simplest form, we have this thing where you get into a new area and we call it SILS: stop, look, listen, smell. And so you get dropped off into an area and you just pause, given circumstances are correct, you give yourself a moment to soak in your environment. You're stopping, you're looking, you're listening, you're smelling, just absorbing your environment to be situational aware to what's going on around you. We have a ton of data that supports like how effective that can be. As far as like application for everyday life, it's something that we teach, a situational awareness training, and a very practical application. And a lot of people walk out of our courses saying like, okay, I'm never going to walk through the parking lot anymore with my AirPods in and my face on my cell phone because of all that's going on around me. Situational aware is really using the natural senses that we've been born with and using them to our advantage. Like if you're in the grocery store with your family and you see a commotion or something going on down the aisle, part of that is being situational aware, where you're not walking through the store with staring at your phone and not being aware of that. Where it's like, no, I have my kids, you know what, we're gonna leave the store and we're gonna go this way, or I'll just go around the aisle here. It's thinking upstream and avoiding compromising situations by just keeping our eyes and ears open.
What do you mean by thinking upstream, Jake?
Yeah, Robin, you want to chime in on that?
So upstream thinking is just like, if we are right here in the river and here's the problem, let's always be thinking, a couple meters upstream, so you have the ability to react. If you're always thinking right here, you're not postured to react appropriately. So if you're down and in, this is what most people are today because of the invention of the smartphone. People, one, are not experiencing life anymore. Like when you just drive down the road, every car is doing this in and out of their lane. Everyone is looking down at their phone, looking across the street. Everyone is down and in at their phone. So one, they're not experiencing life, but they're really setting themselves up for potential failure. And we're not talking about, we don't want people to be paranoid, but if you're up and out and enjoying life, you have the ability to see, okay, I see, 2 blocks away. I mean, I could use an analogy from the SEAL teams. There's a burning trucks and there's a bunch of guys with guns. Well, maybe we turn here. So that's that upstream thinking. I'm a couple blocks away before I get downstream. I don't want to get there and make a decision. I want to be assessing my environment and making the best decision as fast as possible. And the best way to do that is being up and out. Live life. That's what we really just advocate. It's like, yes, I love my phone. I'm addicted to it. I'm trying not to. I'm trying to break my addiction. But if you can take your head up and out of it, one, you can see more and experience more life, but you're prepped to react. It's just like the analogy we always use is if you're in a restaurant and you notice there's a north entrance and a south entrance. And in the north entrance comes an aggressive, I don't want to disparage it, like a big motorcycle gang that's obviously set to do some destruction. Well, leave, get out the back door. There's no need. We don't fight. Like that whole like Roadhouse era of getting in a Patrick Swayze bar fight is ridiculous. Recognize what's going on and be humble enough and mature enough to be like, oh, we probably should leave. And that's upstream thinking or preventative thinking. And it's just it's just experiencing life is what we push for.
Well, there's practical things too, right? So you don't want anything in your hands. You don't want your hands in your pockets.
Right.
You want to be thinking about what kind of shoes you're wearing, right? In case you have to run, so things like that. And that is a fascinating thing. It's so people have this ego attachment to not fleeing, but fleeing is almost always the best alternative, isn't it? Opposed
Absolutely.
to conflict. Because even
Right.
if you're
Yeah.
even if you're, say, for example, a badass Navy SEAL like you two guys, you're still going for the exit because the probability of you getting hurt, that's something that's
Why
fascinating. A lot
deal
of
with
people-
it if you don't have to?
Yeah.
yeah. I mean,
Or
isn't
even
so this, go ahead.
another practical application too, like gas stations, right? People, obviously more people going to electric cars and this and that, but just from an overall life standpoint, if my car is low on gas, I'm gonna, like, ideally I fill up at a good gas station in the middle of the day, rather than, hey, it's late at night, I'm a woman by myself, or even a man by myself, I'm not gonna stop at that dark gas station in the middle of the night in the neighborhood that I probably shouldn't stop in. Like, avoiding putting yourselves in those compromising positions is,
Or Jake, the very simple ones are the ATM.
yeah.
You can just Google search this stuff and you'll find, we use real life photos from stuff we find on the internet, but someone being just down and in, and they're just so not aware. And again, it's not being paranoid, it's just being aware. If I walk up to an ATM in a dark alley, all the lights are out, and you see someone sitting behind the car 2 feet away, maybe you just keep walking. Or just it's just very simple. Be aware of what people are doing. And we also have a lot of other things too, like watching people too. If you see someone constantly nervous and touching their face, these are indications of nervousness, especially if you're at like an ATM and they keep touching their waist. That's printing. There's typically a gun going to be in that waist. People do things when they're comfortable. They don't do the facial touches, and they don't constantly looking over their shoulder, something like that. And these are things we teach in these courses we have, but there's some very specific telltales to something is probably going to happen. And this is where, try not to use the ATM at night in the alley. I don't know, I'm just trying to come up with some very basic
I mean,
examples.
here in Puerto Rico, when we moved to Puerto Rico, one of the first things that the locals told us is, I told Jake this too, you don't stop at stop. I mean, we're from Ohio and we're super boring and we're rule followers, okay?
Yeah.
So here they said, at night, don't stop at stop signs, don't stop
Stoplights.
at red lights,
Yeah.
don't go to gas stations at night. And we live in a relatively
Pretty
safe part of
civilized.
Puerto Rico.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
they just, those are the rules. And I'm sure that's frankly the way most of the world is anymore. When you travel, you got to really be and you always want to be careful that you're not getting boxed in when you come up to a red light.
Right.
You want to leave space, and you see the Puerto Ricans, actually, they do that. They
They'll
don't get up.
close the gap.
Well, they'll
not at
close the
light.
gap behind you, but they'll leave a space, in
Yeah,
front
right.
of them. So if they had to get out of there, that they could. It's not being.
It's being smart, but
Right.
I think you're right with all of our devices. It's so easy to subconsciously not be smart and aware,
Yeah.
because it's ringing or it's buzzing, or we're late for an appointment, or an alarm goes off or whatever.
Yeah.
And so it's something that I have worked on with our being out and about, especially when we're out with family, and just, trying to be more aware. And I remember when my dad was teaching me to drive way back when, and he put me through, so he would say, okay, what's the color of the car behind you? And that I will always remember that, like, I wasn't really paying attention to that. How many car lengths are they from you? Just like
Yeah.
basic survival things. So I think that the world really needs to get back to a lot of that, and we would all be in better shape. But, kind of a mindset question for you. How do you manage fear when it's real fear, like some of the things that you guys have been through on your real deployments, versus the daily fear that we all feel bubble up now and then? How do you control that when it's such a natural response that humans are programmed with?
This is such
Jake,
a good question.
let me
Yeah.
start with this one, and
Yeah.
I know you can caveat to it,
Mhm.
but what we like to use, essentially inoculation. Someone is lying if they tell you they're not afraid, especially in combat. If you're flying onto the X, like landing right on bad guy land to rescue Princess Leia, it's not a natural feeling. You have the drive to go there and get this hostage rescue done, but it's a lie if there's not some level of fear. But how we combat it, we inoculate ourselves to it by repetition. Perfect practice makes perfect. So not just practice makes perfect, because our brains are simple computers. They're simple processing units. So encode into this brain perfect repetition. So whatever your process is, if it is a hostage rescue, you're going to practice doing weapons drills, how to use a weapon system. So it's innate knowledge. So you have all your bandwidth is towards making a good decision, not pulling this pistol out or using this gun, the functionality of your day-to-day life. You do thousands and thousands and thousands of hours of repetitions. So you don't have to think about the mundane. And I say it's mundane because it's just part of your job, carrying a weapon system or transitioning from a pistol to a rifle, all that stuff. So my point is we practice every aspect of a mission, whether it's from the insertion, whether we're taking helicopters in, we walk on and off them all the time. The best way to get on them, the best way to get off them. There's a correct order. When it lands, how do you get on and off this thing? To every aspect of a mission, from insertion, infiltration, to actions on the objective, all the way back out, you rep it out and rep it out and rep it out and talk about contingencies and talk about anything that can happen, and then still expect the unexpected to happen. But that's really what we're talking about. You become such a well-oiled machine more often than not, you don't even remember the fear or the anxiety till you're back home and you're like, whoa, that was a close one. Wow, that was a close one. Because you're not thinking about that little stuff because you have a mission to accomplish. So that's why we're huge fans of practicing. Whatever it is you do, practice it, practice it, practice it. So all your bandwidth goes to making good decisions, not whatever the system is. And again, we can easily talk about drawing a pistol from a holster. That doesn't resonate with like 99% of the population. But if you're not working on that, you're going to actually look at your holster and then look at the pistol and start thinking about it when you're in a life or death situation. And I'd prefer, if all things were equal and we all had 25 meg of bandwidth, to use 25 meg to make a good decision. That pistol comes out of the holster innately, because you've repped it out thousands of times. So it could translate into whatever it is you do. And that's how you inoculate your body for stress and fear. And then one other component is mindfulness. Being aware of your sympathetic nervous system, being aware of physiology that our bodies go through, that if you're not aware of it, it will hijack you. So the physiology that Jake and I always worry about is sympathetic nervous system, essentially fight flight kind of stuff. But when you're in a life or death situation, what your body does, it goes through some really quick physiology. You get a huge dump of adrenaline, which causes you to breathe really quickly, which you get ocular occlusion, you get tunnel vision, you get displaced, time and space is completely displaced. Your hands get cold. You ever notice when you're nervous why your hands get cold? This is the sympathetic nervous system saving you. It's all the blood in your extremities is pooling to your vital organs. It's just basic physiology that our bodies are still dealing with from, living in the cave however many thousands of years ago when that saber-toothed tiger came to get us. But these are the things your body is dealing with, and we want to be aware of that. So if you're aware in a business meeting that my heart's racing and my hands are getting cold, oh my gosh, I've just engaged the sympathetic nervous system. Jake is getting to me, or this client is engaged my sympathetic nervous system, which historically is fight or flight. This is something that was engaged when we were being threatened with life or death. So the biggest takeaway is just take some deep breaths. And you don't have to do it overt because you don't necessarily want your client to see this. Or for me on target yesteryear, I would just take like 4 deep breaths, and you can coax yourself into being calm again. If you hum just a little, you can coax the vagal nerve to calm down and go into parasympathetic mode.
You can't control it once you're aware of it.
You have to be aware of it. That's what you're saying. Yeah. Opposed to reacting to it. Yeah.
Or letting it hijack you, letting these systems hijack you because you're not aware. And the next thing you know, you're arguing with a client or you're arguing with my wife. And I'm like, how did that happen? My hands are freezing. I'm in the sympathetic nervous system. My heart rate is racing. If just being aware of this stuff is the best way to prevent it from taking over and making a bad decision or saying something you regret a few minutes later.
And Julie, I think your point earlier about how, you talk to clients, you talk to folks that you guys deal with about wanting to be in these like ultra comfortable environments. And that's the antithesis to recognizing being in these systems, because the more often we make ourselves in uncomfortable situations, the more comfortable you become dealing with what Robin's talking about. And so it comes back to that discipline piece too, right? Like if I can be disciplined enough to put myself deliberately in these uncomfortable situations, and it doesn't even have to be crazy extreme scenarios, you're able to recognize the sympathetic nervous system and then control it so much easier, because you're like, I've been uncomfortable before. This is how I do it.
Mhm.
It's conditioning. You're conditioning your body to react better or appropriately.
That's really interesting, but you have to be actively aware of that. You can't go through life complacently. You won't even notice when it's happening,
Right.
or you'll think that's just normal. That's my normal freak out. That's what people
Right.
do, but I think it's really interesting that once you recognize it, and that maybe that's the first thing, is recognizing it. So then you can do something about it. Like I feel like I'm not a great fan of flying. I'm fine once we're up in the air, but like I get travel anxiety. So that's when I know, for me, I've got to chill, right? And I've got to kind of go through that process. And, I was a musician, so some of our pre-concert training, we would do some of these things. But I think, it's so easy to get away from that when you do your day-to-day routine, and, then something happens and you go into that freak out. So I think it's really key training, just as a human being, what you said, what both of you said.
Well, what's really fascinating, Julie, what I learned was, so there's psychological fear and then there's like real fear. You guys have experienced real fear and you guys have experienced psychological fear, but the way it manifests is exactly the same, like what Robin just said. And so what you guys have been able to do is you've been able to take real fear and apply the same tactics that we teach our coaching clients to get past their fear of hearing no.
Yeah.
Because
the reaction is the same.
Yeah,
right?
the physiological reaction is the same, but that's awesome. So you guys, I will. You guys, this is a whole chapter in our book, and now we're going to say endorsed by Robin and Jake.
Awesome.
Talk to us about, like, if you had, each of you had 3 most significant things that you
Stand
learned
closer.
as a SEAL that you do use in daily life. We try to make our listeners have practical, tactical things that they can apply. Most of the, we do have a few, maybe you have a coaching client that's a SEAL, or
No, he was an ex Marine fighter pilot.
Okay. Well, but most of our clients are not. So can you make it practical? I think the situational awareness that we talked about is certainly one of those, but what else do you maybe do daily that you got from your SEAL training that we can all use?
Yeah. I
They
think
show up early.
Show up on time.
These are the only 2 guys that we've ever
I know.
interviewed that aren't late.
Ever.
So they show up early. There's one.
I mean, time is critical. I think one big thing that was in our community is we would talk about reputation is your currency, and just your ability to perform and to be a man of your word was so important, right? If you say you're going to do something, do it, be on time, just the simple stuff. But you start to take that stuff for granted when you start to see, like, oh, that actually is pretty valuable. But I think going back to the beginning of the conversation, the grit, like when Robin and I were first starting our business and kind of mapping out the plan that we're going to do, we went back to, look, man, whatever it takes, we're going to put in the hours, we're going to put in the work, and we're going to make this happen. And so I think that's one big piece for me that I've taken away and I've really appreciated, is just we're going to make it work at all costs. You know what I mean? Like
Belief.
And having just a strong sense of drive to succeed. Another thing for myself that really helped, that I've taken from the community, was we really drilled down on the why of anything. And that's our forward-facing company is Fortified Risk Group, but our umbrella company is Genesis Action Resources. And Genesis comes from the why. Like, why do we do anything? And Simon Sinek has a great YouTube video on the why. But as an instructor and as an operator, you have to ask yourself, like, why am I here today? Like, why am I selecting students? Why am I deploying? What's my mission? What's my personal philosophy to accomplishing any of this? And at the end of the day, kind of like what we started with, my why was, I think we live in the greatest country in the world, and I want to continue to support, defend, protect freedom, allow future generations to have a better life, or at least continue the freedom that we have. And how do we do that? Well, I think there's good and evil in the world, and good people have to stand up against that and fight against that. And that's what it came back to me. So when we go back to, is this guy worthy of standing shoulder to shoulder downrange with my brother and protecting him, that was my why. So the grit and just really understanding why we do something is kind of what I've taken out of the community.
And so one more thing, Jake, that we really use too every single day, that we use in the SEAL teams, is this brutal honesty. Or so classically, when you go on a mission, the second you come home, regardless of how dire things may be, some people may be going to the emergency room, some people may be going to the morgue, some people, you get back to base, you put your radio on charge, you make sure your weapons are all loaded, and you go into the office. The entire team gets together, and we do what's called an AAR, or a post-op, after action review. And we are brutally honest, regardless of how successful the mission was or how bad the mission went. But you go from Z back to A, isolate every single aspect of that mission, identify what went right. And did it go right because we were lucky or because we trained to it? And then can we replicate that? Great. What went wrong? Was it because of negligence? Was there a single point of failure that we didn't identify in training? Eradicate that. Then we praise in public, we scorn in private. If someone needs to be scorned in public, there better be a good reason for it, but hold people accountable. And we use this for everything, because if you just finish whatever product it is, and you're just like, great, and we don't talk about it, well, you don't fix anything. And classically, you stagnate. So instead of constantly growing and growing and growing, you plateau, and it turns into in the tactical world. If you stagnate, that can be really bad. Stagnation, just assuming that you're good to go, getting complacent, really can end up in a really, really bad way. So it worked in our community. It still works today. And it's just having that humility to take criticism, being humble enough to always be a student, and willingness to criticize each other. We do it all the time, not to be mean. And there's a time and place, like if it was myself and my command master chief, I don't scream at him. He was always willing to take criticism, use good order and discipline, but hold each other accountable. If someone went left and they should have gone right, we'll call them out on it, so to speak. And it will always allow you to grow. There's always room for growth. And there's always the opposite. There's always time for stagnation if you're not careful. And stagnation is super dangerous in our old life. And I think using these processes allows us to always provide good services for our clients. And it always allows us to be brutally honest with each other to grow. And that it helps so much.
Tell us about your company. So it's called Fortified Risk. Jake mentioned it. We talked about being situationally aware. We talked about the problem with becoming complacent, so how does being lack of situational awareness and complacency equals problems for most people, even on a normal person level, if they go to the gas station the wrong time of night, or some sort of executive or celebrity. So could you guys describe to the listeners what Fortified Risk is all about?
Absolutely. So we have, at the end of the day, our company keeps people safer. That's our goal. That's our mission. We work with high net worth folks that have profiles, public profiles or private lives that require a certain amount of security. So we'll come in and we start at the top and just do a full threat assessment of their public profile, their digital profile, their risk profile. And then we fill from what we identify from that threat assessment, we then bring solutions to play. And that could be everything from additional training, like we can do situational awareness training. We do it one-on-one. We'll do it in corporate environments as well. We'll train security teams. We'll train executive protection teams. We'll bring in the right cameras, access control systems. We'll get in line with their management team and help with HR policies, like how are you hiring, how are you firing people, to really just bring that holistic solution. And then the other verticals, we do have a private security force as well, where we operate executive protection agents and we operate infrastructure, uniformed guards at a handful of locations as well. And so where we found, I think, a lot of success is there's kind of a big unknown in the industry of, if I just spend more money, maybe I get a better product. And we've been able to come into some of these corporations and some of these high net worth folks' lives and say, you either don't have enough in place, or you don't have what's right in place, or you're actually completely overspending, let us help
They're
you
being
get a
ripped
better,
off.
yeah, let us help you get a better product for the right price, so that your company, your assets are safer.
So who's your ideal customer? Like maybe you can give us you can make it up, Jake, right? But give us like a profile of someone that hired you guys that you chose to work for, because
Yeah.
I'm sure it's mutual. It's not just
Yeah.
someone who wants to do business with you. You want to do business with them too,
Right.
because you're going to become part of these people's lives.
Yeah. I'll give you a personal example, and then a corporate example, if you will. And a public one now known, Ben Shapiro is a client of ours. He did some, gave us a little plug on his podcast not too long ago. And he has a very up and coming company. And we've come in and we've just transformed their entire security profile, from the way that all of their talent travels around the United States, around the world. We provide that entire security package as they move. And then corporately, we've stepped in and we've gotten in lockstep with their HR to make sure that, again, they're hiring, they're firing, that that entire process is as clean and as secure as possible. And then their infrastructure, they have offices around the United States. We've made sure that their offices are manned appropriately with the security that's needed, that their cameras are correct, that their access control is correct, and that they're not getting ripped off by anybody. So we've integrated with them at the highest level. And then from a personal high net worth person, we've had clients bring us in and say, hey, these are kind of some of the problems I'm dealing with. I don't know who to trust. I don't know, do I need a full-time security guard, or should I just get cameras? Should I do this? Should I do that? And so again, we'll come in, we do an entire threat vulnerability assessment on these people. So we'll pull their entire digital footprint, we'll pull their physical footprint, like what is forward facing on these people and what is at risk. And then we come back to them with like a written deliverable, and we show them like, here's like maybe social security numbers and EINs that are vulnerable right now. Here's your address, here's your other properties and these states that are publicly known. So if you are concerned about this, we can help you put a defense around this. If you do have frequent travel that's taking you from state to state or out of the country, we'll build that security team for you. And so that's how we've helped high net worth folks.
So what type of security threats, for example, would your typical customer, not like Ben Shapiro, right? I mean, he's completely on a different level, but a normal executive type that's coming to you, and they're, so what they don't have any physical threats necessarily, they're not dealing with all the things that, say, for example, Ben deals with, but what would be kind of the prescription to make them
like, maybe what don't they know that they should be worrying about?
Right.
Yeah, I think it's a great question. I think what we're experiencing right now is the digital world is so available, right? With dark web, what's on the black market, you can become a really good hacker right now for not much money and not much training, really. And you can actually get into systems that you probably think you shouldn't get into. And so if you're a high net worth individual, a corporate executive that works for a company that is maybe polarizing politically, or just has a fair amount of competition around it, what we do is we'll come in and we'll say, we can run this threat vulnerability analysis from your digital footprint alone and say, here, like I was mentioning earlier, like, your residences are here, your EINs are here, your social security's actually out here. What are you using to protect your digital content? Like, if you're traveling all the time, is your cell phone exploitable? Is your computer safe? And so we can run a full analysis on that and see if there are threats hitting them like that.
What would be a threat for people? I mean, having their information stolen for the sake of hacking and getting to bank accounts, or is it a threat, a physical threat, or what? Like, so if you could define kind of what are the ranges? Yeah, with the ranges.
Yeah, it's a full spectrum. I mean, we have stuff where we have clients where we're running social media monitoring, right? And there will be people that say, let's find out where this person lives because we want to go do X, Y, and Z. We want to go bring harm to this person. So that's like on the physical side, but that's where physical and digital meet, because the adversary is using a digital platform to meet a physical threat, right? Or to go carry out a physical threat. So with that, we can say to our client, well, here are the protocols we can put in place so that they can't find your address. And then separately, let's run a background check on these people searching these threats, see if there is a criminal record, report it to law enforcement, so we can capture it from both sides.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Mrs.
The other
Harris?
piece too is that that really just shoring up contemporary physical security. You'd be surprised how many folks today have the net worth that it's very inexpensive. It's like, what is your security worth? It's a challenge, like if you can just put some contemporary, aesthetically pleasing layers of security, you can significantly change your posture. And we're not talking about putting machine gun nests and barbed wire around your house. We're talking about like very strategically placed planters. My mom could hit the gas instead of the brake and end up in your living room if you don't have things oriented appropriately, or your office could be vulnerable. My father-in-law's doctor office, like once a month, it seems like a patient hits the gas instead of the brake. So strategically placing like ballers or a beautiful tree in a planter that is designed with a robust concrete base that you can't tell as a proprietor, but it's aesthetically pleasing. It's beautiful. And just all these different things you can put a staircase here, something to just change the approach for an actual adversary or someone accidentally doing something to your structure. And it's not that hard, but there's very contemporary stuff out there, and that industry is kind of always changing. And it's something we really at a fundamental level like to introduce to our clients. You should have some very fundamental physical security, and you'd be surprised how many don't.
So Jake, if someone wants to engage with you guys, what's the threshold client for you? So you're going to get a lot of attention, and maybe some of the attention and some of the business that will come from this is not for you guys. So help them to understand if they can engage with you at, where's the cutoff? Do you have some sort of like pre-qualification, right? And using sales terms.
Sure. I will tell you, we are not the right fit for a lot of people. It is a very unique niche kind of client and market that we work with. That being said, we do talk to a lot of people and see if we can help them in some way, in some form or fashion. Our cutoff is a lot of people hear what we do, and then just by hearing it, they're like, yeah, I'm not going to pay for that, or I don't fit that profile. If you do think you are interested in it, initially that qualification, reach out to us. We have that landing page where we can get your information at fortifiedrisk.com. But typically it is a high net worth individual or someone that either is currently paying for security and says, I might be overpaying for it, or I think I might need this, but I'm not sure how to take these next steps. Or separately, we found a lot of benefit with corporations they're up and coming, like they're meeting that 50, 100, 150, 200 person employee payroll, but they're growing, like they're going to double that or triple that. And they're like, we don't have security measures in place to help us grow into that corporate security structure that we need because of X, Y, and Z. Those are a lot of the pre-qualifications that we've found are helpful, whether it's from a corporate side or from a personal side.
So fortifiedrisk.com is the pathway for them to have conversations with you guys.
Yes.
So the last question we have for you, and this is an interesting question.
Okay.
If you could leave us, Jake and Robin, both of you guys, because it's interesting how much you guys say the same thing, but distinctly different ways. It's very fascinating. So if you guys could leave us with one piece of advice, what would it be?
Big question.
It's a great question.
No, they can think on it. They're going to ponder. It's going to be really good.
It doesn't have to be oneness.
Hold on, let's wait.
Yeah.
This is really good. Let's put the pressure on. Let's see if we can create some fear.
Yeah.
I think they can handle it.
My fingers are getting cold.
My hands are cold.
See the sweat.
That's us because the air conditioning's off.
No, it's us.
I would
Go ahead.
I would go back to earlier when we were saying like, what did you take from the community or what did you take from the teams, the SEAL teams? For me, it's always going back to the why, going back to the genesis. If you're in sales, if you're selling homes or mortgage broker, or thinking of your audience, I would always ask yourself, like, why are you doing what you're doing? And then just like continue to peel that onion back and peel it back and peel it back until you get to the core. Like, keep asking why until you're like, that's it. So if you're like, why are you selling real estate? Well, to make a lot of money. But why do you want to make a lot of money? Well, because I want to go on vacation and buy this house and provide for my kids. But like, why? Why do you want to go on vacation and provide for your kids and have that nice house? And like, peel it back. Like, what's that? Is it legacy? Is it something that you want to leave behind? And so that would be what I'd leave. That's my biggest piece of advice, because it helps keep me focused. When it was in the SEAL teams, working on deployment, working on a mission, like, why am I doing this? I knew I was doing it because I believed in our mission to the fullest, to protecting life, to protecting freedom, and to allow that to go on for generation after generation, so that my kids could have that, so that the people listening to this, your kids could have that, and we can continue to allow that to exist on this earth. That was my why. And in our company today, it's the same thing. We want to keep people safe. We want to provide the option. If someone needs help, like, that's what we're here for, to keep people safe.
And Jake, to add to the why, not only like the theoretical, why do I do what I do, but even just boiling it down to simple processes. Why do you do that process the way you do it? You should always be analyzing the process. And it goes back to, if it's always been the way we do it, well, that is one of my two least favorite answers. It's because I was told to do it that way, or we've always done it that way. They're the worst, because whatever industry you're in, it will always be adapting. It will always be evolving. So you should always be assessing yourself and your systems and asking, why do we do it this way? Because there may be another way. There may be a more efficient way. If you do something and it requires 3 steps, but you could do it in 2, my gosh, you're now 1/3 faster on target, or to that client, or to that end state. And that's what we're always doing, assessing, why are we doing what we're doing? Can we be better or more efficient?
That's awesome.
One piece to the why, and it might be too much info, but I go back to the money thing, because a lot of times I feel like from a real estate or some type of professional environment, it's like, oh, I just want to make more money. There was a time in SEAL training where if you made it through Hell Week, you got an extra $40,000 as a student. And there was all this like, oh, we're going to do it. We want to see if we can get more students through without changing the standards. And so if you made it through Hell Week, you made an extra $40,000. Numbers did not go up. Like, more people did not make it through Hell Week with this like $40,000 carrot dangling in front of them. And I think that goes back to the why, because you're not there for the money. You're there for something much bigger than that.
So Jake, out of the SEAL team, you said, I'm going to drill down on this and peel the layers back since you started it, right?
Yeah.
So your why now is the same as it was when you were a SEAL, but is it evolved? Has it changed? Or is your mission still basically the, protecting people in the country? Is now you have family. I think you have 3 kids, right?
I do.
Has your personal why changed as you've gotten older, and as the life experiences that you've had, has it become more defined?
At its core, it's still the same, right? As I look back at, I went into the Navy right out of high school, and I didn't know that I had that why in me at the time, but I did, but I realized that, years later. But I'd say at its core, it's the same. I want to provide for my family. I want to give them that environment and the ability to protect as well, to spread truth, protect life and freedom. It's really,
as long as it's in line with a calibrated moral compass. That's that's like our foundation is. We will always, there's a lot of folks out there that do things for the dollar, and it lets them dictate kind of their morality. And we're firm believers in doing the right thing because it's right. So Jake and I refine and make sure our compass is calibrated every month or every morning almost. Make sure we're giving our client what they ask. Make sure that I'm giving my wife what she asks. Am I gone too much? Am I missing my son's birthday? It's got to be a happy medium between getting the product to the client and keeping my family happy and doing everything in line with a moral compass. Do the right thing because it is right.
Yeah,
Hard
I
to
love
argue
it.
with that.
Yeah, that's the perfect way to end it, Robin. Jake, don't try to top that. That was good.
You both are great.
Guys, listen, this
We
has
really
been a true
appreciate you.
honor for us. And frankly, we could go on for hours because we only got through really half of our questions, but we wanted to give enough time to talk about fortified risk. So if they want more information and maybe they're maybe 1 degree or 2 degrees away
We're
from
just
someone
curious.
or just curious, they can go to Fortified Risk and they can learn about the services that you guys provide. I suspect from this podcast, and I'm sure you'll be invited to other podcasts as well, that you guys might be figuring out how to come out with some sort of digital product or your own podcast or a book where, normal folks can
They have classes.
right, and benefit from the from learning how to enhance their personal security. Robin talked about that, lights, locks, and, situationally aware. There's a lot of different, I think there's an enormous demand right now, all over the
Even
country.
a basic guide for normal people,
Mhm.
that just, they don't know what they don't know. But if you do these 5 or 10 things, this is a start to at least become aware. So, and I probably got that just from you guys today.
Yeah.
And we really appreciate that. If somebody's not ready to go into full blown security, but there are things that they need to be aware of.
Right, exactly. Well, guys, listen, it was a true honor. Thank you very much.
Yeah,
Thank you. Thanks a lot for having us.
This
Thank you
was a
guys so much
highlight.
for having us.
This was a highlight for Julie and I.
For sure.
After probably 5,000 podcasts and over 20 million downloads, and that's 20 million downloads in maybe the last 4 years. That's not,
Wow.
yeah. So this is for us personally, this was a true honor, and I sincerely appreciate it. And guys,
Absolutely.
honestly, God bless you, and thank you for your service to our country. It's incredible for us just to call you guys friends.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you. Really appreciate it.
This podcast is a part of the C-Suite Radio Network. For more top business podcasts, visit c-suiteradio.com.